So I'm going to launch in here and talk to you about emotions today. But first, let me introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Scott Taransky. I'm a professor at Concordia University, where I teach the master's level parenting class for all family life educators who are going through to get a master's degree in family life education. These are pastors, these are children's pastors, these are social workers, counselors who want a family life education degree, and they have to come through my class. And in my class, then, they have to work with a parent. It's a very practical class because I'm all about helping children change. Those are our end users in the coaching program. We want to help them change. I also teach coaches in the National Center for Biblical Parenting to do the kinds of things we're going to talk about tonight. Many of those coaches are in the program, and you're welcome to interact with them in a private message in this conversation or publicly, whatever you'd like in the chat. Feel free to use that as you'd like, and you can talk to the coaches. But each coach, as they're being trained, is working with a parent. My love is figuring out children. Every child is different. And when I sit with a parent, or I sit with a coach who's sitting with a parent, either way, I'm either training coaches or I'm working with parents myself, I really enjoy hearing about a child's situation. And it's complicated with all kinds of things that are going on, not just emotions, but other things going on too. And when those things take place, then it's my job to come and bring some ideas that are going to start moving that child in a heart level to some new levels of their own personal development. That is my goal. And I use biblical truths and a heart-based approach and practical solutions to do that. I've thoroughly enjoyed doing that in my practice, and I love passing that on. So this session today on emotions is an outgrowth of that. And so I welcome you to be part of this with me. Let's pray together before we get started. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the privilege we have to mold the hearts of children, influence them. But Lord, we know that ultimately you're the one who changes a person's heart. So we ask for your grace in the lives of children we're thinking about right now who are struggling with emotional challenges. And I ask, Lord, that you would provide insight and wisdom that will apply specifically to the children that we're all thinking about. So give parents wisdom, Lord, bless them in their specific role to counsel and guide their children toward discipleship for you, to emotional health, to maturity. Lord, use them in a powerful way, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. I'm excited to have put together these packages of tools for you should you want to look at them. Just I'm not going to talk about them right now. I'll talk about them later. But you can go to biblicalparenting.org, Parenting Power Pack, and you can learn about the various tools. The first one, Parenting Power Pack, is just about all kinds of practical ways to help you think about a heart-based approach to parenting, what it looks like, audio sessions, books, work with your children. The Parenting Power Pack Plus has more tools dealing with specific challenges children have. And then there's your link to the personalized parent coaching. If you go to Parenting Power Pack, you'll learn more about how to find out about the biblical parenting coaching program. So that's where we're headed, and you can take a look at those things. What I'd like to do with you today is I want to talk about emotions in children. Now, I want to do more than just talk about emotions. I want to talk to you about how to work with children to help them overcome emotional challenges in their lives. And I want to talk to you about a second cycle of parenting, and I'm using emotions as the example to do that. So you're going to learn a lot about emotions today, but the more important thing you're going to learn is how to help children when they're off track. When I say off track, what I mean is when they're on track, it's like a train being on track. It's on its tracks and you're moving forward. The things we talked about last week, children are doing their homework, they're having a good attitude, all those things about being on track. There's several ways that we practice that. We talked about that in the first session. I sent you with homework to work on that. Now, in the second session, we want to talk about what happens when children get off track. Often it's because of emotional challenges. So I want to talk about emotions, help you understand emotions from a theological perspective, and then I'm going to give you specific ideas about how to deal with them and help children change using a heart-based approach to parenting that will not only help children now, but it will help children for the rest of their lives. You're trying to give children life skills because the reality is that every person, child or parent, must have a plan for dealing with these three buckets of emotions. These are buckets. There's lots of things in each one of these, but everybody needs to have a plan to deal with anger. Everybody needs to have a plan to deal with sadness, and everyone needs to have a plan to deal with anxiety. You must have a plan. Your children must have a plan, and it's our job as parents to help our children develop life skills. That means there's training that's necessary. There's work that needs to take place. And if a child's emotions are out of control, what that means is that they need more training. And I'm going to show you what some of that training looks like tonight so that you can practice this and you can start bringing about some change. This is not an easy thing we're going to do, but the most lasting change takes place using a heart-based approach, and we're going to see what that looks like. Now, first of all, let me say this, and you have emotions yourself, whether you're a parent, grandparent, church leader, whatever you are, okay? You have emotions yourself. So what I'm about to say, you understand. If I were to summarize in 3 words how to deal with emotional challenges when they cross the line, okay? The anger, sadness, and anxiety are not wrong. In fact, they're helpful emotions. You get angry because something's wrong. But when you use anger to solve problems, then you've crossed the line, okay, as a parent. Or when children have anger explosive episodes, they cross the line. Sadness is helpful because it helps us when we're disappointed to reevaluate our values. It's a great emotion that drives us into some evaluation if we handle it well. But it crosses the line when it goes to despair or people become demanding or whatever it might be. Anxiety is helpful in a person's life, a certain amount of it, because it makes us conscientious. It makes us complete tasks, get things done on time. It helps children to feel like they need to be on task when they're doing their homework. Anxiety isn't a bad emotion, but it crosses the line when it starts to control you and dominate your life. We're talking tonight about when it crosses the line. What do we do? 3 words summarize how to handle all emotions if we're going to work on them. And these are general words, but this is what we need to be able to do. You have to be able to let it go. Now, the way you let it go with anger is different than sadness and anxiety. And we'll talk a little bit more about giving children a process for letting it go and how we're going to do that in order to bring about change in children. So we're going to help you know how to let it go. That will be helpful, but just keep in mind, let it go. Now, those words should ring true to you from last time when we talked. Do you remember we talked about when you're getting things done, one of the things you practice is helping a child. You call their name and they need to come. We teach children responsiveness to authority. I'm not saying every time you call a child's name, they need to come, but if a child has a problem in an area, sometimes we go into some exercises, some therapy exercises where a child does need, every time I call their name for a period of time, they need to stop what they're doing and come. Why? Because they have to let it go. If a child always has to say, wait till I get to the next level, or I'll do it later, that is a problem. And when children do that, then they're very self-focused and it creates a problem for them. They must let it go. So I want to make a point here that if you're going to make changes in a child's emotional management, then you're going to want to go back to what we talked about last time in the training part and not just stay here on the correction part. Training trumps correction alone. So we want to really, we don't just want to working on correction alone. We want to use training because that's what helps a child develop what they need in their lives. And there are a lot of training tools that we use in areas of emotions. Here are some scriptures you can look at later. I'd encourage you to, when I get this whole slide done, take a screenshot of this and you can see the different scriptures, look them up later. But I'm just trying now at this point to give you an overview, a theological overview of emotions so you understand them. There are several heart tools that we use to overcome anger in our lives. Sometimes a heart tool is tolerance for an annoying brother or people who are irritating. Sometimes it's forgiveness, depending on what kind of anger it is. Just know that there are tools to help us deal with anger. And those are heart tools that help us overcome lingering or life-dominating emotions in our lives. We focus on where we're going in the heart-based approach, not just on where we are. And so we're going to teach children more about these heart qualities that they need. When it comes to sadness, sometimes sadness is reflected in disappointment. When you say no to a child and the child's disappointed, that disappointment creates problems for them. I'm going to talk more about specifically sadness in a bit, but I want you to see that God has given tools for this. When your child can't accept no as an answer, they need gratefulness. They need to be grateful for what they have instead of complaining about what they don't have. That's a tool, a very significant tool that God uses to change our hearts and to prepare our hearts. So you can use that as therapy with your child. Some children need gratefulness therapy. That's what it is. And so it's not just a sit-down meeting where you say, let me explain to you what gratefulness is. It's practice sessions where you're trying to help a child to be grateful. You might have every hour in a day, if your child has real negative thoughts and negativity, every hour in a day, you might have a gratefulness session with that child. Before you're free to go, tell me one thing you're thankful for that you haven't said already. And after some time, children have to think more about the gratefulness in their lives. That's just some tools. Now, when it comes to anxiety, anxiety is a very difficult and challenging emotion that we address in the Biblical Parenting Coaching Program with children. And there are a number of tools that we do, but one of the key ones we see in Philippians 4:6-8 is prayer. That prayer is the spiritual tool that helps us address anxiety. And we're helping children to be able to let things go in different ways too. But I just want you to see there are tools, heart-based tools, to help children deal with their internal emotions. And I want to lay out the big map here about emotions first before I give you parenting tools to address them, so you know where you're going here. It's not just about avoiding anger outbursts or helping children overcome their depression or helping children who are anxiety take on a new challenge. Okay, it's the heart that we're working on. We're helping children make some significant changes in that regard. Now, here's the fun thing. Watch this. When you work hard on anger and you're able to overcome it, just think about your own life. You know, if you're able to overcome some of your anger, you see someone else overcoming that, what happens? They are now able to love. You cannot effectively love in your life when you have bitterness and anger robbing you of your ability to do that. So love is the end result here that God wants us to be able to experience. When it comes to sadness and disappointment, what do we need to do? We need to develop joy in our lives. That is that's our target quality that we're moving toward. Instead of being sad and depressed, we're moving toward joy in our lives. That takes practice. That's work. And that also is in the heart. And of course, when we come to anxiety, then we want to have peace. And that's God's design, is that we have this peace that passes all understanding. I'm quoting Philippians 4, that guards your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. So that's what we're working on. Now, you should recognize that bottom line, love, joy, and peace, because Galatians 5 tells us what? Those are God-filled, Holy Spirit-filled feelings listed in the fruit of the Spirit. The first three things of the fruit of the Spirit are love, joy, and peace. That's where we're going, and that's what we want for our children. We want to give them the life skills. Some parents are already saying, whoa, I need this in my life. I don't know if I can teach this to my kids. That's okay. The family is a laboratory for growth. We're going to say to our kids, look, I've got a problem with anger. I don't fully know how to deal with my own disappointment. I mean, I struggle with anxiety too. Let's work on this together, and then the family becomes this learning experience, this great place where we can learn and grow. So you can now take a screenshot of that page if you want in order to use it in the future. All right. I want to talk to you about when a child is off track. You see, when a child's on track, they're going in the right direction, things are moving forward, and we're able to accomplish all kinds of tasks. And we get the tasks done with character. Character's revealed. But when a child's off track, then inside of their heart, they're off track. Okay, they might be off track because they're yelling at you or walking away or not doing a job. But I'm talking about inside of the child's heart. These are the things you'll see. You'll see bad attitudes, defensiveness. You'll see justification. You know, when you try to correct a child, they can't accept correction themselves, and so they'll argue with you. When a child can't accept no as an answer, they'll argue with you instead, and in place of their sadness, or to deal with their sadness. They'll be defiant. You'll have bickering. You'll see emotional inflexibility. Big problem that children have. Blaming problems on other people when you try to correct them. See, when a child's off track, that means they need something, correction. Sometimes the correction comes from life. Life corrects people and they get back on track. But many times parents are stepping into the picture here and saying, son, we can't live this way. You're doing the wrong thing. Or daughter, you need to make some changes in your life. When a child's off track, we might see disappointment. We might see demandingness or meanness. You might see anxiety issues or symptoms come about. You might see a child rationalizing their mistakes or their offenses. You might see a child in despair. You might see a child resisting in one way or another, or you might see anger episodes. When those things take place, we know that the child is off track. Now, notice we're talking not about just behavior. Maybe some of those things look like behavior, and they are, but I'm talking about inside of the heart of a person. They have a way of dealing with the fact that they're off track. We all get off track at times. That is, we all get upset about something. As adults, we get upset. We get disappointed in ourselves that we didn't put gas in the car when we needed it. We get upset with ourselves. We get angry with ourselves because we can't overcome the fact that someone cut us off in driving and now it's bothering us for the next 15, 20 minutes and we can't let it go. We all get off track. Everyone needs a plan from getting from the state of being off track in our hearts to being back on track so that we can continue doing the right things. That is the goal of this session. I'm using emotions to help you understand what that looks like and how to apply it in your life. But you really understand the bigger picture I'm sharing with you is about this parenting cycle. You have to understand a parenting cycle, which is the child's off track and needs to get back on track. And the way you parent a child who's off track is strategic, because the way you parent a child who's off track is going to help them be able to get back on track, but it's also going to help them develop the life skills to deal with their off-track tendencies for the rest of their lives. Childhood is about training. This is a very important area that we want to help our children develop in. So if you're seeing these kind of issues, you know you have a problem with children being off track. So what do we want in our children instead? Well, here's some ideas you could probably add to this. We want children to be able to recover more quickly. I'm going to make a statement here. You might write this down. One of the signs of an emotionally healthy person is that they can recover from upsetting situations more quickly. We all know people who get angry and they're angry for hours or even days. One of the signs of an emotionally healthy person is that they can recover more quickly from upsetting situations. Jot that down, remember it. You might even share it with your child if your child's old enough to understand such a statement. Very important. It's part of being healthy. We want to teach our children what that looks like. We also want to teach our children what it looks like to forgive. What does that mean? What does it mean to apologize? And how do we do that in a good way? To confess, just to be willing to admit your own fault, which of course requires this humility and courage. When you're confronted or you're corrected by someone, it takes humility and courage to learn from that experience. Emotional flexibility, which I'm going to talk more about in a minute, but we want people to be able to have this flexibility in their lives. We want children to be able to take responsibility for their part of the problem. Instead of doing the rationalizing, blaming routine, to take responsibility for themselves. Very important and a healthy way to deal with yourself when you're off track. Yes, someone may have pushed you off track, but you're responsible for yourself. And in order to get back on track, you want to take responsibility. It's a first step toward moving forward. We'll talk more about that tonight. Problem solving. Sometimes you're off track and you need just to solve some problems to get back on track. Gracious speech. Reconciliation often needed with someone. Restitution is often necessary when you get back on track. And just the ability to take initiative when you've done the wrong thing to come back and say, I was wrong, will you forgive me? Now, I've talked about this off-track part of a person's heart just briefly, giving you all kinds of ideas of things that are inside of the heart in this particular area. And so now what I want to do is I want to do another poll. Joan, can you bring up that third poll? I want you to look at your child. Just think about one of your children, the one that probably motivates you to get on this parenting seminar, and ask yourself this question. Does your child have a problem in the off-track department of the heart? I'll give you about 30 seconds. Anybody can participate in this. Please make a comment here. Does your child have a problem in the off-track department of the heart? I just want to know if what we're talking about tonight is relevant for your situation. Is this an area where you believe your child needs some help? We'll take a few more seconds here. If you're welcome to write no if you don't have a problem in this, if your child doesn't have a problem here. I just want to know how many of you, as you're listening to this, are saying, yes, I see this as a challenge in my child's life. Okay, go ahead and can you share the results with people so they can see? I just want you to see that 99% of the people listening here are acknowledging the fact that their child has a problem in this area. And that's not unusual. You know, that's why we get so many calls at the National Center for Biblical Parenting. That's why people are saying, I want to work with a coach. I need help. Because see, what we're doing now is we're not just working on behavior, saying my kid's yelling at me, or saying I hate you, or something like that. Now what we're doing is going into the heart of the child, and we're going to bring some significant challenges in that child's life. So that's what we're trying to do here, to bring about these changes in a child's life. Okay, you can take that poll off there, Joan. Let's do this. I want to share with you a little bit more about the heart, so you understand what's going on in the heart, and then I'm going to give you some very practical ideas. And I've got a lot to share with you on this, so you're probably going to be taking notes furiously as I give you a lot of ideas here. First of all, I want you to see that inside of the heart we have tendencies. So if your child has a tendency to react with anger or sadness or with anxiety, then you're definitely working in the heart. But the Bible talks about some things that are in the heart, lots of things. I put 3 down here. One is desires. Desires are these things I want. And when the things I want become really strong, they become expectations. Things that I'm expecting are going to happen in my life, and I want them to happen. Okay. And so if they don't happen, then if they're really strong, they turn into these heavy, strong expectations, and they set children up for emotional episodes if their emotions are heavily invested in them. So God tells us that emotions are also inside of the heart. And so those things feed together. And I want to show you an image in just a moment. But before I do, notice beliefs are also in the heart, because sometimes children believe things that drive them to their expectations. Believe that they should get more than their brother gets because they're older. Believe that if their brother's annoying, that mom should step in and punish this kid, because that's what moms do. And so if you're not doing that, this child's expectations are high. Children have expectations that they should be able to play with their electronics. Oh, that's what we're going to talk about in our next session. But their expectations are so high that something happens inside of their heart. Let me show you this. This is an example that one of our coaches put together. Elena Svetsloot from the Netherlands. She's one of our coaches from there. And she drew this diagram. And I just want you to see that when expectations are high on the bottom scale and going up and down, when emotions are high and invested, notice what happens in a child's life. They become demanding about what they want. And that demandingness can appear as anger episodes. It can appear, it contributes to their sadness because they're not getting what they want, or they can start feeling anxious. Okay, so demandingness is the focus here, and it creates significant challenges for children. And part of what we're going to do now in this session, I'm going to show you what it looks like on a heart level to move demands down to desires down to wishes. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Let's say that Billy, age 12, comes down to dinner knowing that he's going to have spaghetti, and he's excited about the spaghetti, and he comes down and he finds out there's no meatballs. Now, if the meatballs were in his heart were just a wish, he'd say, oh, I wish we had meatballs. But he'd be able to let it go rather quickly. If it were a desire, he'd say, oh man, I really like meatballs. But he's demanding. So he comes down and he says, what? Where's the meatballs? How can you make spaghetti without meatballs? This is ridiculous. I'm not eating that stuff. And he becomes demanding, and that leads into some kind of an emotional episode. In that case, his disappointment or his sadness is being reflected in anger. Now, what happens in these situations is that children end up experiencing intense emotions, sometimes life-dominating emotions. And so what we're about to talk about is quite challenging. I don't want to make this sound easy. When you work with behavior modification, you can give a child a reward to stop yelling. You know, I'll do this, or a punishment if they keep yelling. Okay, and so they, out of fear or out of desire, they'll want that. But a heart-based approach goes much deeper to help children manage their expectations, manage their desires, understand their beliefs. We're helping them change their beliefs in order to move forward. So that's what we're going to do. And I want to take you into some tools, very practical tools now, to help you understand what that's going to look like for you. In our first session, I introduced to you 3 of the parenting tools. There are 7 tools we use in the Biblical Parenting Coaching Program. Each one of these represent a bucket. If you were working last time, you were used these first 3 tools. And that's why you saw progress, because these 7 tools are the same tools God uses to bring about change in our lives. We're just taking those tools that he uses to work with his children, us, and applying them to the parent-child relationship. The idea of relationship is important because it softens the heart. We talked about last time. Visioning provides perspective. I'm going to tell you why I'm going to help you do this, and it's going to change your life. This is going to be great for you. And firmness are the structures we use, and I'm going to use those again this week, with firmness being structures. It's firmness that builds character. But now we're going to use some other tools that God uses with us. Transferring responsibility means the person needs to own their own challenges in order to move forward. And the next one is coaching. That refers to the attitude of the parent. We're saying, come on, son, you can do this. Or, nope, we're not going to do it that way. And so the firmness ties in with the coaching, because coaches come alongside. They're not just nice, but they're pretty demanding sometimes. They're saying, hey, we're going to do it this way. In order to get out of this problem, we're going to practice this, and we're going to do it more, and we're going to do it hard. And so the coaching implies we're doing practice sessions and so on. Very important part of how we make changes. And of course, in our relationship with the Lord, we have the Holy Spirit coaching us. Jesus said, I'm going to leave you, but I'm going to send the Holy Spirit to you. He will guide you into all truth. So this coaching relationship we have with God, he does this in our lives. And of course, teaching is a very important thing that God does with us. And we're going to now apply that in our relationship with our children. We're going to provide children with practical steps to overcome their emotional challenges they have. We're going to show them exactly what to do, not just tell them stop being angry. Because the how is what makes the teaching component work. And it's the how that brings hope into a child's life. So we're helping children understand this in ways that will bring about significant change. And when I say prayer, I'm talking about all the secret weapons that have to do with God's grace that brings about change in a human's heart. That God's grace wants to work, and we access that grace through prayer. Whereas the prayer of the parent for the child, but more importantly, I'm talking about the prayer of the child and allowing the child to see how God is working in their lives. All of these tools we want to use, and each one of these tools represent a bucket of solutions. It is it's a different way of thinking about parenting, and it takes some training to be able to do this. So you can work on this on your own using the things we're talking about, but I've designed this parenting power pack for you so that you can have 20 audio sessions to listen more to me and Joanne Miller teaching about parenting using a heart-based approach. That you'll have a couple ebooks there that you can download, and some children's worksheets you can help bring about change. And then the Parenting Power Pack Plus goes into specific challenges. And one of the things in there is this anger MP3 that you get, that is a whole session of over 45 minutes helping you deal with anger in children. It's called Helping Children Deal with Anger. So if you're looking for very specific solutions that are practical and biblical, you'll find more of that in the Parenting Power Pack Plus. And then the personalized parent coaching, we've got coaches right here on this training with us tonight. And you're welcome to interact with them in the chat. You can also see them on our website, biblicalparenting.coach. But jot down that website. You'll see more about what that looks like. There are two major parenting cycles, and let me explain this to you so you understand how to use these. There's the getting things done parenting cycle, and there's the off-track, on-track cycle. And we must understand both of those and how they're different, because parents mix these up, and that's why they get themselves into yelling matches with their kids. Okay, it doesn't work. You have to keep them separate. Getting things done is when things are going this way and your children are cooperating. We're training them, but we're able to overcome things just with words. We don't need to go into any other tools, correction tools. We can just say, wait a minute, you're off track there. Can you do the right thing? And so we're going in this direction to move forward. We're trying to help them to do that. At the same time, the off track, on track is a different parenting cycle. In this cycle, what we're doing is we're helping a child who's off track. They're yelling at you, or they're depreciating themselves with comments, or they are ignoring you, or being mean, or whatever. They're off track. They're obviously off track. You can't try to get things done when children are off track. You have to stop getting things done in order to deal with the child who's off track, and you have to parent differently. You must parent differently when a child's off track. Otherwise, this is what happens. You say to a child, you need to come in and work on the dishes and clean up the dishes because that's your job tonight. And the child says, I'm not doing that. I did dishes last night. Well, I don't think it's fair that I have to do that. Now, in that moment, your child's off track. If you keep engaging in getting things done, look, and you start arguing with your child, and your child keeps yelling at you, you, in essence, are affirming or validating their approach, the way they're treating you. You're basically saying, you can yell at me and I'll keep talking to you. That is unwise, unhealthy, and children then develop these unhealthy cycles. It happens when children start arguing with you and you argue back with them. It takes two to argue, and you're trying to get things done, and you think that a child says why, and so you argue and you back and forth. You think you're doing something good, but dialogue placed in the wrong places encourages children in the wrong ways. Children manipulate situations, maybe not maliciously, but they just learn how, if I can keep talking to my mom, I'm going to wear her out. And so parents sometimes validate the wrong responses that children have. You have to stop getting things done. You have to move to a whole different approach, which is, my child's off track. I need to help this child get back on track. And that's what I want to show you how to do. But you must realize that you have to stop what you're doing. You can't continue. This is what happens sometimes with parenting, and the parents escalate and get worse and worse because they're trying to force a child to do something when the child's off track. We need to change. We need to go to something different. It's very important how we do that. So let me give you some techniques. Now that I've given you some theory about emotions and what they look like, now I've talked to you about these two tracks, or these two cycles that we use. So cycle number one is getting things done, but cycle number two goes the other direction because the child's on a detour. Okay, and during the detour, we parent differently. And I want to give you some techniques. There's a lot more theory I could share with you that you would learn through the other resources that we have or in the coaching program. But let me give you a couple tools that you can practice right away. And the first technique I want to share with you is called the break. Now, the break is not like timeout. Timeout is basically a sentence you give to a child for a crime they've committed, and you're like the policeman that has to keep them there. That's not what we want to do. The break is different because the break transfers responsibility to the child by saying and I would even use these exact words. You need to take a break, settle down, change your heart, and come back and see me when you're ready. Maybe the child's 4 years old. These are the words you use. Maybe the child's 14 years old. These are the words you can use. The reason you want to use these words is because you're telling the child what to do. Take a break. You're defining this with the child. They understand this. You need to settle down. That's what their task is. They need to change their heart. That's their mission. It's focused on the heart. Settle down. And then you need to come back and see me when you're ready. Now, I'm not putting you in a break with a timer. At least not initially. That's not what we're doing, because we're transferring responsibility to the child. If you put a timer out there for 5 minutes, I mean, that's what's typically said. You know, if your child is 5 years old, put the timer on for 5 minutes. If he's 10 years old, 10 minutes. The problem is you don't know how long it's going to take the heart to change. Some children are really stubborn. And being a break is strategic. They need to settle down. And when you use a break, you are using a very important parenting strategy we call time. Time. You've transferred the responsibility of the child, and you say, okay, all life stops for you. You don't have a bedroom. You don't have electronics. You don't have anything right now. You need to take a break because the way you're treating me is wrong. And so you need to settle down and come back and see me when you're ready. Now, there are a lot of problems associated with the break. I mean, you're already probably thinking, oh man, my child has all kinds of emotional challenges. I tell them to take a break. We're going to see an emotional challenge right then. And yes, you will. It's going to take some work to develop a break. It is the most difficult thing we teach, but many families have said the break has saved our family. And so I have an encyclopedia of ideas that I can give you when children don't respond well to the break so that you can understand how to deal with it. Let me give you some examples. Let me just divide this up for you. I don't want to derail you too much here with the details, but I want to give you some practical ways to implement this because I don't want you going away and saying, oh, we tried the break, it doesn't work. Oh, our child won't stay in the break. No, 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 no. It works. It is a required course. It is not optional. Children need it. And this will help. It's an adult skill is what it is. All right, the problems with the break fall into 3 categories. This might be a little bit too much detail, but I want you to know exactly where we are. One is getting the child into a break place, usually not their bedroom, but in the hall, bottom step of the stairway, somewhere. You need to go to that place and settle your heart down. So getting the child there is often a challenge. When it comes to those challenges, sometimes you have to, if you have a young child who's 3 or 4 years old, you could pick them up and put them there and say you're in a break. But don't escalate and get the problem with any child of any age. We don't need to escalate it continually. We don't need that in this situation. Escalation is generally not good in this, but with a 3 or 4-year-old, you might have to sit with them in the break. That's fine. The child needs to settle down. With an older child who's following you around the house because he doesn't want to take a break. I don't need to take a break. I can talk about it right now. This isn't fair. Okay, you might just say, I'm not talking about this right now. You are in a break. So the child might not go to a particular place. You just might not announce, you're in a break. All life stops for you right now. So getting the child to take a break, those are a few ideas. What does a child do inside the heart when they're there? How do they settle down? And this is unique for each child. Some children, just time helps them settle down, but we're trying to help them know what they should be saying to themselves and doing. Sometimes it's taking a deep breath. Sometimes it's walking around the room a little bit, if that's permissible in this situation. But the child is saying some things to himself too. And the reason I'm dividing this into 2 areas when the child's in the break of things they can do and things they can say. Because Psalm 19:14 says these words, Lord, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. A child who's in a break is not doing the right thing. And the words of their mouth, the things that are coming out of them are wrong, and the things they're saying in their hearts are not appropriate. And so what we're trying to do is empower them. And so after the fact, you don't want to dialogue with a child who's enraged. So rarely are you going to have a dialogue with a child in a break. Remember, you've passed the transfer of responsibility to them. Your child will try to bait you and have a discussion with you or say all kinds of mean things to you to get you into dialogue. No dialogue takes place when a child's in a break, but when the child comes back out of the break, then we do dialogue and we talk about it then. So the child's in a break, needs to learn how to settle down. They might say to themselves, and we're going to prepare them, we're going to talk to them after the fact and say, what did you say to yourself that helped you settle down? Because you obviously settled down to come out of the break. What did you finally say to yourself? And so they say things like, well, this wasn't worth being upset about, or I think I'm settling down here. I think this will work, or I don't want to be angry anymore. Or, children say things to themselves, and we're going to help them develop the words that they can say to overcome this. Sometimes they pray. I ask children what their solutions are, and sometimes they'll pray, God, I need help. Great. If they'll do that, that would be really helpful. So that's a second area of problems. The third area of problems is coming out, because children will come out and say, I'm ready. And you can tell by looking at them that they're not ready. So you can do a number of things to help them. But one of the things you might say is, you need to go back. I can tell you're not ready. And one dad took his daughter's head in his hands and he says, look, I can see on your face that you're not ready. Look at that face of yours. Why don't you go back and just settle down and come back and see me when you're ready? Well, she comes back about 10 minutes later, obviously changed. He took his head in her face and she said, oh, I can look in those eyes. I can see your heart has really changed. Congratulations. You're able to do that. The break is an adult skill, and let me explain to you how it's used in emotional management. Very important. So I'm going to jump ahead to the emotional part here. Whenever a person's off track, they need to pull back. They need to be able to settle down. They need to be able to put themselves in a break. It's really important, and that'll help them to be able to move forward. So the break is going to be a key tool in order to help a child, and I would use that as a technique. Every child can use a break. We may modify it for a particular need and a use, but we can do that. It's like somebody needs to be muted. Now, the positive conclusion is what we do after the break when a child comes back. And let me show it to you and then tell you how you use it with emotional challenges. It contains 3 questions and a statement. Now, what I'm sharing with you about the break and the positive conclusion, remember, are techniques that are designed to help a child who's off track to get back on track. God has a word to describe when you're off track and trying to get back on track. That word he uses is repentance. That's what these techniques are demonstrating. How do you take children through a heart process of practicing repentance? We've designed 3 questions and a statement. You can use these with your child. When the child comes back, you say to the child, okay, good, let's talk about it. What did you do wrong? We want children to go back and evaluate their emotional episode. Not only what did they do, but also why was that wrong is going to talk about the heart issue. Why was that wrong for you to yell at someone or punch someone or throw that thing or to say those mean things about yourself? Why is that wrong? So we talk about that. What are you going to do differently next time? Very important question that prepares children for the next times of life. This is where you're going to start developing the plan. Every child needs a plan to deal with their emotional challenge, and you're going to help them in this so that it's a technique used to work your plan to get a child from being off track to on track. And then you always want to end by saying, okay, go ahead and try again. The reason we're saying that to a child, go ahead and try again, is because we want the child to go back into life, and we want them to be able to respond to the situation and do the right thing. In fact, many times you go back in and practice the right thing. You might say to a child, okay, let's go back in the kitchen. You ask me for a snack again. I'm going to say no again, and you show me the right response this time. So we practice doing the right thing, because that's repentance, not just stopping the wrong thing, but 180-degree turn and doing what's right. The positive conclusion is just a technique, but it's a way to help children get from being off track to on track. And you're going to work this. This is a relational routine. You don't just do this once in a while. Children who are emotionally upset need a plan. Every time that they enter into an emotional drama of some kind, you're going to take them through the cycle. This is the second cycle, the break, the positive conclusion, and practicing doing the right thing. You're going to work that with the child because you want your child to move forward, to do what's right, and to develop technique, the internal life skills they need. That's what you're helping the child do in their lives. So there are two major parenting cycles. Don't confuse them. One is getting things done. I'm practicing getting things done. And in the getting things done, children learn how to deal with their emotions. They learn how to do what they need to do versus what they want to do. They learn how to do things even if they don't feel like it. So a lot of work done in the getting things done. So go back to the last session, listen to it again, and think, how can we practice in our family getting things done to help my child deal with the emotions that they're experiencing? That's the getting things done cycle. Following instructions is our technique. When a child's off track, we are in a different cycle going a different direction. The child is in a break, a positive conclusion, and they're going through a process to get back on track so that we can go forward again. All right, I want you to see those are two major parenting cycles. In the Biblical Parenting Coaching Program, we deal with several other cycles, but these are two big ones that I'm introducing to you in this parenting seminar. We're going to use these when we talk about managing emotions. See, I don't want to just talk about setting limits on kids' electronics. I want to show you how to use electronics to bring about major changes in your child's heart. In order to do that, we have to do these first two sessions first because they're providing the tools. Otherwise, you're just going to have rebellion and anger and all kinds of drama going on. You need these first two cycles to be able to move forward. Before I go forward, I want to tell you a Bible story, and then I'm going to talk about each one of those kinds of emotions. Forgive me, I have a cold, obviously. A Bible story. This is the story that comes from the book of Jonah, and it goes this way. Jonah chapter 1, God wanted to get something done. He used the getting things done department of life, and so he gives instructions to Jonah, and he says, and the word of the Lord came to Jonah and said, get up, go to Nineveh. Well, we have a problem here because Jonah, like a 3-year-old, runs the other way. So God has to stop getting things done, and he must say to himself something like this. Okay, this guy's off track. I need to discipline him somehow. What tool should I use? I know, I'll use a break. Where should I have him sit? And so God creates a special fish to come upside the boat. And so the guys threw Jonah over the side of the boat, and now Jonah is inside of the boat inside the fish for 3 days. 3 days he's inside of this fish. Can you believe that? You know, I tell kids this. I say, you know, if I were inside of a fish's belly, it would not take me 3 days to change or to repent. It would take me less than 3 minutes to make a change. So eventually, though, Jonah chapter 2 is the story of Jonah repenting and coming before the Lord and having a change of heart. So at the end of chapter 2, God has Jonah thrown up onto dry land. But notice what God does next. Because now Jonah is done with his detour, he's done with his break, and God says this. Jonah chapter 3, verse 1 starts this way. And the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time, saying, get up, go to Nineveh. You see what God does? He was getting things done. That wasn't working. So he says, okay, we are on cycle number 2. We're going to take a detour, and we're going to work on this until his heart's changed. Then we're going to go right back to practicing doing the right thing. Our children need that. You can use these words with your child. If you got a teenager who's having a problem, you can say, hey, look, do you need a do-over? Because that's the beauty of Jonah chapter 3. God gives do-overs. He gives second times. He comes to Jonah a second time saying, so you can say to your child, hey, look, do you need a do-over or do you need a detour? The detour is the break, the positive conclusion. And frankly, some children need a detour because that's a way of practicing. That's just a way of practicing emotional management. When you get upset, what should you do? When you see those cues coming on, you need to take action, and that action is always the same. You need to pull back in order to reevaluate before you're re-entering life. So it's very important for children to understand that and to work with it so that they can grab onto this idea of the break. It's part of making a change in their lives so that they can go forward. Now, having said all of that, I can take you into each one of the emotional buckets and give you some ideas. But the most important part of this whole session is what I've already said, in that the parenting process is helping children move from being off track to on track. And you as a parent must have a strategy for that. We can equip you with that. You can take the things you're learning here, get the resources we're offering that accompany this particular parenting seminar, or get involved with a coach so that you have all the tools you need to move that child from where he is to where he needs to be to have the life skills to move forward. But let's go into some of the specifics about dealing with the 3 different emotional categories. Let's start with anger. Now, when we talk about anger, the first thing we want to help children do is recognize the triggers or the cues that are prompting the anger. It's because it's not the cue, it's not your brother that makes you angry. It's something that's going on that your brother does that's triggering something inside of your heart. I don't like irritations. Or sometimes we're being demanding. Sometimes the child out there is doing the wrong thing. But when you as a parent, you see your kid doing the wrong thing, you feel angry, right? There is this response. That's one of the good things about anger. It points out that something is wrong. So you want to identify those cues, help a child. And how can you tell? Because when you know the cue, then you know you're in the arena. If your cue is your annoying brother, or your cue is math, homework, you know you're in the arena, and you can be on guard to know when you start to feel that emotion coming on, what you're going to do with it. The second thing you need to do is you need to stop, pull back, and settle down. As a parent, you do not want to argue with a child who's enraged. You do not want to do that. When the child is upset, you just want to say, you need to take a break. You're upset. You need to settle down. And sometimes often that child, because they're angry, they don't want to settle down. Okay, they do not want to do what you're telling them. They do not want the break. And so it's going to take some work to work that in. The break is an adult skill. Children need it. You work it in. It's an important part. It's going to take some time. It's a hard thing to teach children, but you're going to do it in a way that shares vision. Son, I'm going to share with you an adult skill. This is what adults do. When they are emotionally upset and they're angry, if they're doing the right thing, they need to take a break. We can see adults who don't take a break, and then they use anger to solve problems, and they become ugly people. You don't want to do that. Anger is a very important thing that you can work on, and we're going to help you pull back. So with anger in particular, we're going to help children. That's frustration anger that they experience. And of course, if children experience hurt anger, we're going to teach them how to let that go, what that looks like. And forgiveness is a very difficult thing to do, but we're going to help them do that. Just that, you just need to know, in the anger bucket, there's a lot of work that takes place to change a pattern of angry reactions to patterns that are more patient, tolerant, kind, in some cases, giving up your agenda or cooperating, whatever it might be that's sparking that anger. Children need to learn how to settle down. So we'll spend a lot of time in the coaching program helping children deal with anger, but often it's doing the pre-work necessary to help them address that. Very important. Everyone needs to have a plan for anger. Your work with the child is going to be strategic. A second area is disappointment or sadness. Let me explain to you why working with disappointment is so important. You see, when you say no to a child who's 4, no, you can't have a snack right now. Or you say to a 7-year-old, no, we're not going to watch you can't watch another show right now. You've already watched too much. You need to go out and play. Or you say to a 12-year-old, no, you can't go over to your friend's house when the parents aren't there. Or you say to a 17-year-old, no, you can't have your cell phone in the middle of the night and text all night. You got school tomorrow. Okay, when you say no, what happens inside of a child's heart is they experience disappointment or sadness because They wanted something and it didn't come. They didn't get it. Whenever a child experiences disappointment, or anybody, they have to grieve over the loss. And grieving has 5 stages, as you know, and you see these in children. You tell a 7-year-old, no, we're not going to watch another show, and they exhibit the first stage of grieving, which is denial. What? I can't believe you're even saying that. Why would you say I can't watch another show? This is ridiculous. We don't have anything else to do this afternoon. Denial. Second, they experience anger. You're the worst parent in the whole world, you know, and they go off on an anger tirade. Third, bargaining. If you would just let me do this, if you just let me watch another show, then I'll go out and play then, or I'll do whatever you want me to do. Bargaining. Fourth, depression. Oh, slunking around the house and kind of punishing other people, or just feeling depressed and sad about what's going on. And lastly, acceptance. Children need to learn how to accept no as an answer. And that's why it's so important to train children when they're young to accept no as an answer. There's a parenting philosophy out there that says, make your child happy. Just make your child happy, because then your child will be well adjusted and when he gets older. No, don't do that. I'm not saying happiness is bad, but that is not your primary goal as a parent. We're trying to help them develop the character they need. What we're teaching them to do is live within limits. When no is present, then children can enjoy freedom within limits. But if you have to go outside of the limits, you're in danger. And so children, when they get to be teenagers, often want to go outside of the limits. When I say outside the limits, I'm talking about outside of family values, doing things that are against the law, violating God's laws. They want to go outside the limits for 2 reasons. One is for pleasure, and the other to be happy, and the other is because they want identity. And so those dangerous things. So it's very important to work with children as they're growing up to accept no as an answer. So don't be afraid to practice this with a child, especially a child who gets demanding when you say no. That child needs more practice, but you want to give them a plan. This will help people deal with temptation later. Do you realize that being able to accept disappointment, accept no as an answer, is what helps a person stay out of debt? It helps a person stay on a diet. This is success principles for life. It starts in the parenting dynamic, helping children deal with this. So you want to practice this, and I think you're going to sit down with your child and you say, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I want to help you accept no as an answer. So I want you to know I'm going to say no to you more often, so you can practice this in your heart. And I want to empower you. I want to show you what that looks like and how to do it. And so you say, we're going to use family life as practice sessions so that you can develop more emotional flexibility, more emotional control. And two of the qualities that you're going to put out there as targets for a child to overcome their sadness and disappointment are gratitude and contentment. Gratitude is being grateful for what you have instead of complaining about what you don't have. And contentment is the ability to enjoy life within limits. Very important things that our children need. You want to have a plan for dealing with disappointment. Once you have that, you can use our tools and be off track, on track in order to move in that direction. Anxiety is probably the most difficult of the emotions that children experience. We have some very important strategies we use to deal with anxiety. Anxiety is about control. And of course, when a child, they become demanding, things have to be a particular way, and they feel upset if they don't have control over the situation. And so helping children deal with anxiety is very important. Let me just give you a little bit of parenting advice when it comes to dealing with this, because I think parents make a mistake of arguing with their children by saying to them, arguing too much. I don't think a little bit of this isn't bad, but I think too much of it. Then when the child's angry, say, what you're doing is unreasonable. There's nobody outside the window. Okay, there's no reason to be afraid of the dark. And so we argue children, try to argue them out of their anxiety, and rarely does that work. What we need to do is we need to teach children the difference about being off track and on track. Because here's what happens when you're going down a path and you've got off track and on track, it has to do with your thinking patterns. And so when you start thinking something's going to be bad, then your anxiety takes you further down. If it's bad, it's going to be really bad. And then it's going to be terrible. And then it's going to be disastrous. And then life's going to really end probably. And I'm so really, so they get down this path so far, they can't get back out of it. You can't argue yourself out of anxiety. You know what you need to do with anxiety? You need to switch tracks. You need to move from the bad thinking to the right thinking. That's what you need to do. And prayer helps you do that. And Thanksgiving or giving thanks helps you do that. Thinking about the good things that you have. And Philippians 4, chapter 6, verse 8. Let me quote it to you. It says this is a pretty good quote, I think. It says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, with prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God. So you're using prayer and thanksgiving to do that. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard both your heart that's racing and your mind that's going crazy in Jesus Christ. Guard your heart and mind. Then the next verse says, whatever is good, whatever is noble, what's right, whatever is pure, and so on. Think about these things. Switch tracks. Children must practice switching tracks. Son, it looks like you're getting off track here. You're getting anxious. You need to go take a break, settle down, or you come over here and take a break with me if you need to, but you need to settle down. You need to move to the other track because you know that going down this track, you'll never get off. You're just thinking bad things and you're developing bad patterns in your heart, negative patterns that aren't going to help you, and bad things that are going to take place inside of you. So we're helping children in this anxiety area. There are many more ideas about dealing with anger and sadness and anxiety, but what I've tried to do is give you an overview of what this looks like so that you can go in and bring about some solutions in your home. You can start creating a framework of change. Please go back and listen to session 1. Because if you listen to session 1, you're going to see how emotional management starts in the getting things done. That's why I believe children need chores, because it's hard for them to work and do things on your schedule. They want to do it on their time frame. We're helping them let it go and work with all the things that take place when we're managing and doing the things in the getting things done. Then when a child's off track, we go to cycle number 2, and we practice that cycle in order to help children change as well. Here's your assignment for this week. And in just a moment, I'm going to let you ask me some questions. Here's what I would like you to do. If you'd like to ask me a question, I would like to talk to you. So I'd like you to raise your hand, and Joan will acknowledge you, and we're going to unmute you and show your video. And I'd like to talk to you about your situation. You don't have to share your name. You don't have to share your child's name. Tell me what's going on, what the age of your child is, and what's going on, and I'll try to give you some next steps with your specific situation. See, one of the things I love about the work that I do is that I'm a strategist. I'm a relational engineer. I like to get into a specific situation. Every parent is different. Every child is unique. And you can't just take a generic system and say, here's what you do, without tailoring it to specific children. This isn't like baking cookies. Every child's unique, and we have to help them. Your assignment this week is to practice with your child using the 7 parenting tools. Go right through them. Do the best you can in them. I know you only have a little bit of information. Do the best you can. If you order the resources there, check those out. You're going to learn a lot more. You'll have all kinds of ideas in each one of those categories. But do what you can to practice using the 7 parenting tools. Practice break in the positive conclusion. See how far you can get with it. Check out number 2. Check out the Parenting Power Pack, which is there, and see what resources are best for you. And then thirdly, sign up for session 3, Navigating Electronics. I've been told that it is now live. You can go there and you can sign up for the session there. And when you do, you'll get the link to it. So anytime now or following up until the date on the 26th of October, you'll be able to sign up for that. So that's your assignment. That's what you're going to do as you're going forward. Let's go ahead here, and I'd like to dialogue with people about this subject. So why don't you go ahead and raise your hand and tell me, we can talk about anything in family life. You can tell me anything that's going on, any challenge you're experiencing, and when you do, I will try to give you some next steps to deal with that particular situation. Okay, it looks like Joan is unmuting Jamie, and maybe we'll get Jamie's video too. Go ahead.
Do I need to do the video?
You don't have to, Jamie. If you don't want to, that's okay. Go ahead. Tell me what's going on in your home and how can we help you?
I would like to know what you do for the break technique when the child starts wrecking things and throwing things and destroying things.
How old is this child?
My 6-year-old does it, and my 4-year-old is starting to observe that and display, do that a little bit too, but not nearly as much as my 6-year-old.
Well, let me just say, this gives me a good opportunity to say that it's very emotionally upsetting for even parents when we're using a tool with a break with a child who's very angry or upset. So it's just, we're emotionally connected. And when someone's yelling at us or throwing things or being upset, then it makes us upset. And so it's very difficult. In the coaching program, when I'm working with a family, sometimes I'll say, hey, look, call me when you're in the middle of an episode and I will walk you through that so you know what to do. Because at any age, we could have these kind of temper tantrums that children have. But I'm going to give you some ideas to work on with your 6-year-old. One, you don't want to stay in a situation and escalate with your child. So let's say the child is angry and yelling and so on. It's often de-escalates if you get out of the picture, out of the situation. So if you can, walk away. You do not have to win something. If this isn't like a game, we're trying to win something. Okay, we're not fighting a battle that we have to win. We will win, so to speak, in the end. And we don't have to win an emotional battle in the moment. A child who's emotionally upset is trying to bait you. And so all this drama that a child puts on when they're emotionally upset is designed to suck you in. Do not get sucked in. Do not increase the drama by getting involved. If possible, walk away. Now, obviously, we're not practicing this in the grocery store because you can't walk away in the grocery store. We're practicing this in the house. So we're working on this and trying to practice this in order to make it work. So that's a technique you can use, walk away. There's sometimes when a child is doing self-harm or destroying things that we have to restrain a child. You may have to do that, but you want to be really careful you're not hurting a child when you do that. I prefer walking away and de-escalating that way. Most of the things that a child is going to be near or whatever are replaceable. I mean, we're going to be able to fix the sheetrock or whatever. And so children think they're destroying life, but you know that we can fix these things later. The point, and you're not sending a child to a room where they're trashing the room. Okay, I would suggest we don't do that. We send them to the hall or bottom step or somewhere where it's a little more control. Now, those are some things in the moment. But more importantly, outside of the moment, we're going to have conversations with this child. We're going to say, Billy, look, you're 6 years old now. One of the things I'm helping you do, and I'm really excited to, now I'm visioning, okay, I'm really excited to help you do is manage your emotions. So we're using this break idea to help you do that. And I'm going to put you in a break because a break is a way for you to settle your own heart. In fact, because you're 6 now, I'm letting you help discipline yourself. I'm not even putting a timer out for you. What I'm doing is letting you help decide how long you're going to be in the break. As long as you can come out, change your heart, and be in the break, I'm going to let you do that on your own. Self-discipline is better than parenting discipline. I think you would like that. And so I want to help you do that. But your mission when you go to take a break is to settle down. And I'm not going to get involved in the drama. So very important, you pull away. Whatever you do, do not dialogue with a child who's in the break and say, this is why you're there. Or you don't say, you want to do as little dialogue as possible. You don't want to say to them, if you just settle down, you come out of the break. You don't want to do that. Don't talk. All you say, if you're going to say something, is remember, when you settle down, I'm over here. You can come out. So, but you don't even want to say that too much. The point is the child needs to settle down in order to make some progress here. Very important to do that. And then we're going to try to make some progress. So now maybe you're having, people call us and we're having like 10 anger episodes a day. And now we're going to try to reduce the quantity and the number of times. And we're going to try to reduce 3 things. I'll just say these: the quantity, or the frequency of anger episodes, the intensity of these anger episodes, and the recovery time. We're going to decrease all 3 of those things. And we're going to talk to the child, say, yesterday we had like 10 anger episodes. Seems like you're making progress here, and we're going to move forward. So let's try to make that change. So we're going to help children in that way. Thank you for asking that question. Oh, go back to that slide. Okay, I'll be finding that. Why don't you take and J minors? Okay, you can do everybody else, but J minors. Can you do that? Okay. Looks like you got your.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome. Very good.
Hi. Oh, it's dark. Okay.
Tell me what your situation is, how we can help you.
All right. I have a 4-year-old.
Okay.
Pardon me?
4-year-old. I gotcha.
Yeah, 4-year-old. Kind of enjoys order. So if something changes on a dime that they weren't expecting, there's high chance of meltdown. and
Yes.
I don't always know what that might be for her.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm driving in the car. The other day, there's a trash truck that was blocking our normal route. I didn't
Yes.
even realize that she cared what way I went, but I
Yeah.
went the other way and she flipped out in the
Okay.
car. And I'm like, okay, what do I do here?
Uh-huh.
I have a sibling of hers in the back with her, and I'm just like,
Oh,
we gotta go to school. So
okay.
it's like stuff like that. Um, when it happens at home, I can always put her in the hallway and have
Yeah.
her calm down, and that does work, like you said.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, traveling in the car.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Let's not deal with the car yet. The car, I call the car the torture chamber of parenting. Okay, you've got to have a good plan before you get to the car. So let's not practice in the car until we've got this going a little bit. All right. And somebody want me to share my screen, so I'm going to do that while we're talking here, so they can get that. But when you're a little girl,
yeah.
what little girl, right?
Yes.
Okay, when your little girl, she has some order in her heart. She likes order. It's going to be great when she gets older. She's probably going to be organized, and she'll organize your whole house and everything else, you included. But right now, that order that she has creates this emotional inflexibility. So
Hmm.
I would go back to the instruction routine with her, and I would say to her, I'm going to call your name 20 times today, and when I call your name, I'm expecting you to come to me no matter what you're doing. So you're going to
Okay.
interrupt her. You're going to practice this, because she needs to be able to give up her agenda. She needs to be able to respond to you. And so that's where you're going to do the practice. She needs to be able to give up what she's doing. And you're going to tell her at times, you're not going to give her choices about the meal maybe that you're going to make or the clothes she's going to wear. I know there's a big movement to give children choices because it gives them
Yes.
control.
Yes.
Okay, but there's sometimes, and that's okay. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But children who always have to have the choice
Yeah.
breeds selfishness in them, and your daughter needs some therapy. So I would sometimes say, here's what we're going to do. Today, I picked out these clothes. This is what you're going to wear. And she's not going to like that. But you're going to tell her, this is what we're working on. Remember, we're working on flexibility, and you're going to give it a name. And so you're
Okay.
going to see it in life, and you're going to practice it. Then you're going to affirm her that she's
Yeah.
growing in flexibility. And as she does, then she's going to grow in that in some good ways. And then once you do that, then you'll be able to apply it in the car, or when we're trying to leave the friend's house. That's bad. We're going home now. No, I don't want to go, and so
Yep.
leaving things
That's
is hard. So you're going to have to practice that a lot in order to make that work. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. You got it down.
Okay, thank you for asking the question. Let's go on to Julie. Can we do that? All right, Julie, you can unmute yourself and unmute and put your video on if you'd like, so we can talk. Do we still have Julie there? Got her
Hi
vid-
there.
Hi.
Hi.
Julie?
So many things really, but I have a 10-year-old adopted daughter, so there's a lot of things. We've had her since she was 7, but one thing you kind of mentioned tonight, when she goes for the break, she always tries to come right out. And I know her heart hasn't changed. So how do I work with that? And
Okay,
if I
great.
tell her change in her back, she comes right back.
Okay, first of all, thank you for your work in adoption. Using your home as home missions is fantastic. Thank you. I've adopted children myself. It is a ministry, and you have your hands full most of the time. So I just affirm what you're doing. Hang in there. You're giving this little girl a gift. So sometimes children who are adopted certainly have challenges with the break, because we use the principle of separation. And when you separate a child who has issues with reactive attachment disorder or separation issues, then that can be a real problem for them. So you want to be careful how you use this. And that's why we give the child control. And we want to say to her, she's 10 years old. You're saying to her, you need to go take a break, settle down, change your heart, come back and see me when you're ready. So she goes to the break, you're telling me, she puts her bottom down in that bottom step or wherever, but she comes back before she's ready to come out.
Yeah,
And
sometimes 30 seconds,
okay, so she comes out. So we can do a number of things. I'm just going to give you one set of ideas that you can say to her. You're going to say to her, honey, listen, I'm grateful that you're initiating to come out, because that tells me that you don't want to be in a break. You want to come out. You want to change your heart. But I can tell by the way you're standing, the way that you're having a problem with that. So let me help you. I will help you if you want. So why don't you come over here, and let me hold you for a minute. Let's breathe together. And because sometimes That's what, as adults, isn't that what happens with us? You know, if we can get connected with to another person, it helps us to overcome our emotional challenges. So that's just one way that you can do it. Another thing you might say is, okay, looks like you want to come back. That's good. But maybe we should do something here to help you, because I can tell your heart doesn't look ready. Why don't you do some jumping jacks?
Hmm.
And because sometimes that's what we do, right? I got to go out for a run to settle down my heart, get my heart recentered. So we use physical activity. Another thing you might do is you might say, okay, it looks like you want to come out. I'm going to give you a job to do. Show me you can do it with a good attitude, and that'll help us both see that you're actually ready to come out. So why don't you go and hang the towel up in the bathroom and report back to me that you're done. And I'll know by the way you're doing it that your heart is changing. Why do we do that? Because sometimes you and I, when we get upset, what do? We start doing the right thing, right? If we start doing the right thing, getting back into life, our emotions trail along. But there are times when she's just going to be in a cycle, and anything you do is not going to work. And so at that point, you're going to say to her, I'm sorry, we cannot go forward. You need to take a break. And that's when you might use a timer with a
Okay.
child. Okay. Or you might say to a child, we use another idea in the coaching program we call a penalty box, which is a lot like timeout, which is, okay, you're not ready for the break. The break is an adult skill. You need to go to the penalty box, which is in my room on the blue chair. When you settle down, then you can go to the break, which is on the bottom step. And then you're ready, because we want kids to realize the break is an adult skill, not just a childish activity. And this is actually a ticket to her emotional healing. Now I'm visioning, okay? Visioning. You want to do this with her at times to say, you know, the break is really powerful. I need to use the break in my life. It's just a really good tool. In fact, we're going to have dinner in a few minutes. Why don't you go take a break before dinner? Break. And she said, well, I didn't do anything wrong. No, the break isn't for doing something wrong. The break is for centering yourself, getting yourself centered with the Lord, centered in peace. And so I want you to go center yourself, come back and see me when you're ready, so that we can have dinner and you can be ready to contribute to the meal. So now we're using the break idea in a positive way that's helping this young lady learn how to address it in some good ways. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for being on here with us. Can we go to Allison Crow?
Hi. Oh, I guess I'm already unmuted.
You are. We got you unmuted there. Allison, what's going on?
Well, my husband and I actually did some counseling with you several years ago. We have 4 boys.
Okay.
And they are now 19, 16, 14, and 9.5.
Okay.
So the ones out in college. And so after the first seminar that you did, it refreshed me on all the things of the break and what does honor mean. And so the next morning I sat down my 2 younger boys, because I still homeschool those.
Okay.
And I basically said, you know, Keegan, the 9-year-old, I said, this is what we're going to be doing. When I call you, you're going to come. And I went through all the steps. And then I said to Brady, because he's 14, I said, because you're older, I may do something a little different with you. And I may say, I want you to go to a room and do an honor check. And he laughed. And he did not think that that was worthwhile. And I said, do you guys remember what honor means? We've talked about honor before, treating someone as special, doing more than what's expected, and having a good attitude. And I kind of feel like maybe I have, I don't know, since my kids are older, part of me feels like I don't want to say missed the boat, because I still have a 9-year-old, but also with my 16-year-old, we've had rules with all the boys of before you get on electronics. So I'm really excited for the next one, that you need to ask permission. You need to make sure your jobs and schoolwork is done, and you need to use a timer. So there's a limited amount of time. So they're outside and doing other things. And all of them, except for the youngest, kind of blow those rules out the window. And when we talk about it, they just don't really listen. They don't follow rules, and the discipline is kind of gone out the window. So I'm a little all over the place, but.
Okay. Let me respond to this. I'm really glad that you're tuning into this session before you do the managing electronics one with me in a couple of weeks, because this is where you really need to do some work, because your 14-year-old is at that stage where he's blowing you off. And that tells me we've got some real challenges in his heart and in the working dynamic between you and him that need to be adjusted. So practice in this area is really important. And so I would say to him, first of all, you want to work with him on his own, not with his 9-year-old brother around. That will make your relationship with him more potent. You're using relationship, and you want to build relationship with him, emotionally connect with him, as we talked about. Then you want to say something like, hey, bud, we need to be able to work together here. Okay, I'm giving you a task to do. which is to do an honor thing, to look for, you don't want to call it an honor thing? That's fine. You can call it contributing to family life. We all live in society. Everybody has to contribute. We all have a responsibility. This house is not my job. This is our job. We all work on this as a family. And it's important for you to learn how to contribute in family life. So you seem to think there was a problem with the honor. I'd like to hear what you had to say about that. Now, it's very important to listen. Okay, when you're listening to your 14-year-old Brady, you want to say to him, I'll listen to everything you have to say. And you don't argue. Just write down. Just write it all down. Whatever he says, you write it down. Okay, that doesn't mean you believe it because you wrote it down. You're just, and so you said this, so you said this. Okay, I got it all. And you want to say, let me think about some of those things. You walk away. You don't have to argue with him about them. Okay, you want to listen to what he has to say. There might be some points where you're going to dialogue later, but so listening is important. It helps a child feel affirmed. But we're going to listen, and then we're going to say, okay, look, I got this. We can talk about any one of these things you want, but you have a responsibility when I give you a task to do it. And one of the things we are going to be working on in our home is to help you to have life skills that you need. So one of those is being able to contribute. So I'm going to work with you on that, and I'm going to expect you to do it. And so here's what the system is. And you can say, we're going to do this at 10 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to have, what do you want to call it, Brady? Whatever, we can call it Brady time, or we can call it others time, or we can call it contribution time, whatever you think. But it's going to be an exercise time for you because, and then we go into visioning. Visioning is be really helpful for him. This is what makes an employee successful. It's called customer service. This is what makes relationships successful in a marriage or in a home. And that's why we're working on it. And you need this. So you're going to go back and do some visioning, and then you're going to practice. You really need to practice with Brady to help him to be able to move forward in some ways and develop some new patterns so that he's not blowing you off here. There may be some other things going on, but let's just do that.
Characterized him as God gave you an extra dose of emotions.
Yes.
And my 16-year-old has a similar issue. Sometimes when I ask him to do something, he'll say yes. And when I say now, it's hit or miss, it seems. And he's right over there listening.
Who's right over there listening? Which one?
He's way over there is my 16-year-old.
What's his name?
Connor.
Hey, Connor. Just saying hi. Hey, nice to meet you. I'm glad you're listening. I just want to say that I'm trying to give your mom some ideas, but the biggest thing is the value that you're going to experience from your parents. It's really important. You're 16 years old now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can I just give you a little pep talk here for a moment? This is for Connor. This is not for your mom. This is for you. You right now are in this stage we call adolescence, a strategic time in your life when most of the people you know are going to make significant decisions that are going to damage their lives. There's so many things that happen during adolescence where people start doing things that are bad. They start violating the law, or they start developing patterns of dishonesty, or they start smoking. They do that during adolescence. And so it's very important the choices you make right now as you're working forward. Jesus told us about this. He said there's a broad road. It's broad because lots of people are on it. It looks attractive. And there's sometimes when Satan, he likes to make everything look good over here, while over down here, he's hiding the bad stuff. And people get sucked into these things that are pretty difficult and painful. You want to be on the narrow road. Jesus says there is a narrow road, and it's narrow because very few find it. And when you find that road, then you'll be, it leads to life, he says. So you're making very important decisions right now. And if you can get out of the age between 10 to 25, that's adolescence, without creating major problems for yourself, that would be very successful, because most people your age don't do it. Most people make significant mistakes. They mismanage sexuality, either with pornography or getting involved in sex outside of marriage. They mismanage substances, and they get involved with marijuana or other drugs that create problems for them. You want to be really careful, because if you can stay within the boundaries and you can do the right thing, great things can happen in your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, God bless you, man. Nice to talk to you. I'm grateful that you're listening. I didn't want to leave you out there. I didn't know you were on there. I would have talked to you in the first place. All right.
Thank you so much.
Hang in there. Do what you need to do, and come back to us next time. We'll talk more about electronics, okay? Let's do another question, Joan. How about Cynthia?
Hi, Dr. Taransky. We are having a hard time with our 12-year-old daughter now. We saw you a few years ago in family counseling and had great experience. Everything you suggested worked. And then, things got better. And then we all kind of fell off the wagon and we stopped being consistent with things. And we didn't realize that everything was really falling apart until everything fell apart.
Sure, I understand.
And we're having very serious difficulties with defiance. So, and, just plain old no,
I know exactly what you need to do. Okay. Because you know what you need to do. I'm just
start all over again.
Start back at the beginning. You have to. You have to go back to the beginning. Okay. You have to practice the instruction routine, and you want to present it to your daughter, and you want to say, honey, look, I really value our relationship. Start with a relationship. I really value our relationship. I feel like as we're working on schooling now, or we're trying to get things done around the house, we're having a lot of tension, and I don't want to have that tension with you. I want our relationship to be good. I want it to be close. We really, we should have a real close relationship, but I think that when we're getting things done, we're running into trouble. So first of all, I want to ask you a question. I'm the mom. I have to give instructions to get things done, but can you think of some ways that I could do that better? Because I want to learn. I've never raised a Mary before, but I want to work with you in a way that's best. So if you have some ideas for me, I'd like to listen to what your ideas are. And so you listen to whatever she has to say. And maybe you can incorporate some of those things, and maybe you can't. But you're going to say to her, I want to have a close relationship. I want to be working on my part. Here's what we're going to do. And you're going to start working on, go back to the instruction. You remember before when we were working with Dr. Taransky and following instructions? Back then, our relationship was much better. I think we're going to go back to some of those things because those are not just childish things. Those are adult skills. And so I think we need to work on some of those things so that you can be more effective, not only now with me, so we can have a close relationship, and with Dad, but also because this is going to help you when you have your own family someday, and when you are in college someday. I mean, God has gifted you with so many good things, but if you can't get along with people and you've got to have it your way all the time, we're going to have a big problem. So this is where we're headed. So you position yourself well, you make it as positive as you can, and then you start practicing in the course of the day with a lot of affirmation. Hey, thank you for valuing our relationship. I know you really didn't want to give up your agenda there, but you did. Congratulations. And so we do a lot of affirming. And there's a kind of visioning that you want to use. I'll just take you into this just for a moment. Whenever your daughter does something well, or she's successful at what you're working on, then what you want to do is you want to use vision number 2 conversations. Vision 1 is what we've already talked about. Vision 1 says, let me tell you why we're going to work on this. And you start working on it. Vision number 2 conversations are the ones that say, what you just did was an example of maturity. What you just did was giving up your agenda. Congratulations on the way you just handled that situation. You are really growing in life. Now, Vision 2 conversations are designed to point out to a child to help address their beliefs. We want them to believe that they're growing. We want them to, and that's why we only do it genuinely. We're affirming we want to believe that they're making changes, that they're growing in a particular quality in order to move them forward. So if you go back to the beginning, start with the instruction routine, and then practice the break, and practice the positive conclusion, and go to the T-chart and all those other tools that we talked about, then you can use those. You still have access to the coaching program, so you can get back on there and watch all the videos again, see the updated stuff that we put there, so that you can look at those as well. And you're at 12 years old now, okay?
We're 12.
Okay, so you're going to at 16, you're going to start all over again. So you got to know. You just got to know, okay, parenting is a process, and you're working on the heart, and that heart needs to change. And we're going to help this young lady make some significant change in her life, okay?
Thank you. I have one more quick thing. What has started when she knows that she's off track. And we haven't used that terminology like what we just talked about in your session right now. But she knows when she is, because we've talked about
Yeah.
respect and honor and obeying. And she could understand it because we've read the book and we've spent time with you. And so she knows what she is. And she is exclaiming how impossible it is for her to do anything differently, that she can't change. And
Oh,
we
okay.
share Bible verses, and she's hurting herself.
Okay.
She's
So
she's
that's really
punching herself.
okay. So she is believing something in her heart that's false, that she can't change.
Correct.
She has a dialogue going inside. She's created a construct that
Mhm.
makes her a victim. She has a victim mentality that
Yeah.
says, I can't change. And probably goes along with entitlement mentality that you need to do these things for me and give me what I want.
Yes,
And
100%.
tends to blame problems on other people and other things, doesn't take responsibility. That whole scenario really is going to be helped with transferring responsibility to her. That we're going to do a lot more transferring responsibility. We're going to correct her, and we're going to change the tendencies of what she's believing. You're going to have to create a list. I mean, using the T-chart idea, I would create a list of the things that she's saying to herself that are wrong. We're going to call them lies, and we're going to bring those out and help her to understand what the truth is. And she needs to practice saying the truth. And that's the positive conclusion. You're going to use that tool to say, okay, what are you going to do differently next time? And you come to that and say, okay, what are the truths? Go get your sheet of paper. Go get your notebook you're writing in. And she comes back and say, okay, what are the truths you're going to say in this situation? Because when you act like a victim, then you are powerless. You don't have any control. When you recognize and say that you're doing the wrong thing, then you have the power to bring about change. This is all hard work. You're right in the middle of it. So this is great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy, for joining with us. And your husband, I forget his name.
Jeff.
Jeff, good deal.
Right.
See you guys. All right, let's do one more question before we end tonight. And then I'm going to pray for people when we get done here. So let's just do one more question. How about April Marr? Can we turn her? She's got her mic on there. All right, April.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you. My question is actually shifting a little bit because the last three people have actually helped because there's some similarities there. Basically, my question is surrounding my 13-year-old. He is a little bit, I guess, young for, I guess, mentally for a 13-year-old, more like 12, maybe 11. But he's having a lot of just ways he processes anger, and that piece was really helpful to me tonight. Like we implemented the break idea early in his childhood, and somewhere around like a few people have said tonight, somewhere maybe around 10 or so, we just fell off the wagon. I like that term. Not at the same time. And we started about 6 months ago, started trying to implement a version of that, teenage version of that, if you will, and not working very well. He runs to his bedroom and will blockade himself in his bedroom and hide and kind of the flight response into just reading and books, and then he's just not dealing with what's going on in his heart. But then later, I think it's causing some anxiety because he doesn't sleep well on those days, and then he'll come out in the middle of the night and start to sabotage things, like take away a HDMI cable so there's not internet on a device, or like, unfortunately, he's very creative in thinking about, like, I would have never thought, one time he took the TV from downstairs and moved it all the way, unplugged it, moved it all the way into his bedroom, even though it wouldn't work because the internet was shut off. But, just different things like that. So what do you do when the anger cycle is so,
All right.
me, it was a really stubborn heart.
Yeah, that's really challenging. I can feel your pain because he's obviously moved his anger out of something that's a normal anger into kind of a revenge process. The fact that he's barricading the room is really a demonstration that he's barricading his heart. He's refusing to deal with his own problems. And so it's just illustrated by barricading the room.
Mhm.
I think it's really important when he finally settles down. First of all, I mean, if I'm going to start somewhere in this cycle, I would start at the place where he finally settles down and comes out of the room. And you say, we need to talk about this before he can go forward, because we need to help him understand what's happening in his heart. You see,
Mhm.
when a person uses revenge to create a form of justice. Now, that's what he's doing. He's saying, I've been
Yeah.
mistreated. I want to balance the scales of justice. And so I'm going to use revenge by doing something to other people in order to balance that scale so I can feel like I've got this peace and this balancing of the scales in my heart. That's really dangerous. And it leads to all
Yeah.
kinds of bad, bad, bad things. Okay.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we really want him to, we're going to do a lot of teaching. So teaching, I think it'd be great to be able to explain to him, here's the path. Okay. When you're on this path, you cannot argue. Like I said, with anxiety, when you're on the path, you cannot talk to yourself and argue with yourself to try to balance the scales of justice through revenge. You must move to a different path. And that
Mhm.
path has to be one of taking responsibility for your part of the problem. It has to be one of, uh, being able to solve problems. So there are three, I'm just going to tell you, here's the three skills he needs to develop. These are the three skills I tell all young people that you want to develop when you see a difference in your home. When I say a difference, what I mean is you have a difference with your parents about an idea of what needs to be done or how it should be done or something, or there's a difference with a sibling about something, because those are the times when you tend to be angry and then you tend to be abusive or mean or whatever. And in
Mhm.
those cases, there are three life skills you need to develop. They are: one, creative problem solving. In other words, we're going to solve this problem creatively. Number two, gracious speech, the ability to talk about a situation with graciousness instead of meanness. And thirdly, emotional management. Those are the privileges of living in a home, and that these are part of your life skill development course that you experience during adolescence. You must develop those things and work on them. I would say that when he's upset, going to his room is not acceptable. And if he's continuing to do that, I might take his door off his bedroom or something like
Mhm.
that, so that it's not a retreat place. It's an unacceptable thing for him to do. Um, and he needs to be able to settle down and respond differently and better. And so we want to tell him exactly what that looks like. If he comes out of his room, after he's barricaded his room or something like that, I would say, are you ready to be done? Okay, if you're ready to be done, you need to go sit in the break place, like I told you, in front of the couch in the living room or
Oh,
whatever it
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So always go back to the break, because in other words, what you're saying is there's an easy way and a hard way to get to the break. I mean, you just go take the break, or you can go through all your antics, but you're still going to the break because you want the break to work. It's not optional. So send him to the break in order to help him to make that change and then come back. He's probably not going to like that. He's going to yell
Mhm.
at you some more. But the point is, we're going to make the break work. It's not an option to do something else, because the break is this ability to step back, settle down, make some changes before you go back into the situation. All children need that. They need to be able to develop that in their lives.
Mhm.
So I would do that. Your situations seems to be getting complex. And if this isn't bringing about change, I would suggest get some help. Very important, get some help. You do not have to live with continued tension in your home, and there's lots of solutions that we can bring in a complex situation like yours, where he's moved to this next level, where he's moved into the revenge side. Dangerous.
Mhm. Yeah.
So we're going to keep talking to him about this and pray. We're going to pray with him. There's lots of tools that we can use to bring about change, and we want to help him to be able to do that as well.
Thank you.
I see
Mhm.
that some of you are making comments in the chat about older children. There are 3 stages of adolescence, and we can help you with those. I'm not particularly talking about the 3rd stage of adolescence, but I do work with parents who have children in that 3rd stage of adolescence. And so there are 3 stages. I'll just briefly tell you. Stage 1 is between ages of 12 and 16, give or take 2 years, characterized by emotionally driven decision making.
Mhm.
I eat junk food. I do what I want to do, don't do what I don't want to do, a bad attitude, moody, whatever. That's the 1st stage of adolescence, requiring a lot of parental guidance during that time, because children are not guiding themselves well. 12 to 16. 2nd stage, 16 to 20, give or take 2 years, is the 2nd stage, a very important stage, where the 2nd stage is characterized by a mission-oriented view of life. Child says, I'm going to go to college, therefore I'm going to study. Where before it was, I don't feel like it, I'm not going to study. Now I have a mission, I'm going this direction. Or I'm going to be healthy, therefore I'm not going to eat junk food. Or with an older child might, they're focusing in that direction. The third stage of adolescence is the launching stage between 18 and 25, give or take 2 years. And that stage is really important. 20 to 25, give or take 2 years. And that stage is this ability for children to be more independent and be able to move forward. And there's a lot of tools we use in the launching stage in order to help children so that they're not living in your home when they're 30, still playing video games. Okay, we want them out there doing what they need to do. And the way we work with children in that situation is strategic and really important. Let me close our time in prayer today. Please go back to the list of your tasks that you need to do. Work on those. Come back and see me in 2 weeks. We'll work more on the putting all these things into practice when we get to managing electronics. That's what I want to show you how to do. I'm excited about doing that because it'll take these ideas and help you apply them in a difficult area in our culture, in your home. And so we'll talk very specifically about tools we can use and parenting strategies to use in order to do that, okay? And we're going to hang around here a little bit longer. We're not going to shut this off right away. We're going to keep let's keep the meeting open, Joan, for a little bit so that people who want to continue to dialogue can do that with the other coaches that are here, with the other people that are on. So we'll stay on for a little bit. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege to work with children. Lord, we need your help. We need your wisdom. It's hard to understand the heart sometimes, and sometimes our children's hearts get pretty complex and messed up in some very difficult ways. So Lord, give us wisdom to know how to reflect you in ways that will bring about change. Help us know when to put more pressure on, when to exert relationship. Lord, give us the wisdom to know how to approach these things in ways that will bring about change in the lives of these kids. Lord, bless each family represented here and the churches that are represented here as they develop parent discipleship programs in their church. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.